Good morning, preppers. Welcome to Goshen Prepping. We're happy you're here. We're happy you joined us as we're going to talk about a few little tidbits of news today. Just things in the headlines that I want you to take a look at because, of course, when it comes to all the things in current events and prepping and everything, it's all important to be able to make sure we stock up and prepare for what's coming. All right, so without further ado, let's jump into the articles. The first one we see is diesel shortage increasing likely in the United States until economy slows. And again, I can't say this enough that we have 25 days. I haven't actually looked at the exact numbers lately, but every single day we have 25 days. The next day comes around, we have 25 days. And so don't think the diesel is disappearing because we do have more coming back in. We've mentioned this on the channel a few times. But this is actually the important part I want to look at until the economy slows. Now, what we're looking at is the Federal Reserve in this situation is doing their best to try to increase the rates to make things more stifling for us to stall our economy because they believe that the inflation is due to people spending too much. And I'm saying the inflation is simply because of economic crisis and people trying to get food and doing what they can as they see problems coming around. Now, I don't think the majority of the United States people are actually looking at what's truly happening in the future. But when we actually have job losses and increase of wages because of supply shortages, that's the true reason why we have the inflation, not from simply people like we're not in a booming economy right now, which is usually what happens. Like in the 1920s, it was a booming economy. So everything went out of control. So the feds raised the rates to slow it down. This is not a booming economy. This is a collapsing economy, and increasing the rates is not going to cause good things to occur. It's going to cause more problems in the long run. So anyway, with this, seeing that the diesel shortages are going to be until the economy slows, obviously we're going to be see some serious problems as time comes. Lots of trucking, lots of shipping, lots of trains, lots of tractors all need diesel to be able to bring in the harvest and everything else. So we're definitely going to see some increases as holidays come around in the prices, not to mention some shortages as well. Furthermore, we also see that there is a pandemic highlights critical shortage in nursing. I'm not going to go through the article per se, but they are estimating the amount of nurses needed over the next couple of years is like 10,000 nurses. It's actually incredible how many nurses that they're looking at needing, and the shortage continues. Before we moved up to Michigan, I was a professor at a nursing college, which I absolutely loved and adored. And even then there was a serious nursing shortage, but the pandemic and everything else has actually drastically increased it. So with this, I want you to understand, it's vitally important that you know somebody in your house, or maybe somebody in your house can take like an EMT course or something to be able to be ready, because needing 10,000 nurses will slow your time in the ER, slow your time at the doctor's office, which, takes forever sometimes anyway, but it's only going to get worse. And you have to understand that eventually, especially if we're looking at some kind of economic collapse, we could see a situation in which there will be no medical help for you. So it's one of those times to go ahead and start training now and start stocking up on medical supplies and doing what you can to be ready. And I've mentioned before, I always recommend Dr. Alton's book, Dr. Bones. Him and Nurse Amy made a book. I will link that below again because it's a fantastic book. And it's one of those things that really is there in case there is no medical help. It's one of those things where you have to be careful reading it and doing it, because if you do it now, you could actually be liable of practicing medicine. But if there is nobody there, if there's no medical professional for you, this book will be helpful. But either way, even if you buy that book or not, you need to be ready, medically speaking, because the nursing shortage is not going away by any means. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the Ukraine war. Russia warns of U.S. of direct military clash risk. This is October 5th. Of course, they're talking about, just a little bit less than a month ago, we see a problem as far as increasing danger of direct military clash between Russia and the West. And they see it as an immediate threat. And I mean, of course, they're going to see it as an immediate threat. And I'm not saying good nor bad. That's not the point. My point is, of course, if Russia is actually at war or attacking or doing special operations with a country next to them, and somebody is supplying weapons to that country, of course, they're going to see that as an immediate threat. And again, not saying we should be doing it, not saying we shouldn't be doing it. I'm simply just stating a fact that because of this, you can't simply send weapons to a country arbitrarily and say, here, use these weapons, but we're not part of this. Our hands are just as dirty. Okay. I'm stressing this channel is not a place for you to spout off on how you think Russia's the good guy or whatever the case. It's not what this channel is all about. This channel is about prepping. And when I talk about these things happening and escalating in Russia and Ukraine against NATO, et cetera, and the United States already have their hands involved, I'm saying this because understand, we are heading for a world war. We're heading for a direct conflict. And if we think we're having inflation now, if you think we're having diesel shortages now, just wait. If that happens, which I could almost say when that happens, because the way it's escalating, it's going to happen, we are going to be going through some serious tough times. That's the moral of the story. So instead of actually spouting off your political views and what's happening, what's not happening, how about this? How about you lend a hand to your neighbor? Isn't that what we're here for? Make some comments below and say, hey, he's right. Maybe we should stock up on XYZ, fill in the blank, whatever you think, instead of actually just spouting off on who's right and who's wrong. Because you know what? Your opinion means a whole hill of beans, mine too, for that matter. So let's just put our opinions that are constructive to people. How about that? Constructive criticism. But anyways, obviously that's a big deal. But then furthermore, we've already seen this coming too. Russia's envoy warns disastrous consequences if U.S. troops enter Ukraine. I find this extremely interesting for the fact that this was 10/26. We're only talking about a week ago. Wow, it's interesting that suddenly they say, hey, you better not send troops over. And it goes through talking about basically how it's really funny because the report raises eyebrows as Biden repeatedly vowed not to send U.S. soldiers into Ukraine itself. Wow, don't we wish he actually had some kind of crystal ball? Because, of course, what is everybody talking about now? Boom. U.S. troops in Ukraine, checking Ukraine weapons delivery sites against the theft threat. So, from my read on it and my understanding of this, as we send an incredible amount of weapons to Ukraine, weapons purchased, by the way, off the backs of you and me and tax dollars per se, they're going there and they're worrying about them falling into the black market. Do they actually have history? They have fallen into the black market? Not that I know of. But it's interesting that they actually have troops there now to try to keep track of this kind of thing. Very interesting. And because of this, Russia continuously warns and said, guys, you can't come in here, send weapons, and now send troops and claim you actually have clean hands. So again, you could see how this could spiral very quickly out of control. Not to mention nuclear weapons, part of NATO is sending up to Finland. There's all kinds of different things happening along those borders between NATO and between Russia and with Ukraine that could make things very quickly go out of control and at least turn it into a de facto state of war, which will lead to World War III. We need to be ready because every time you see another news headline, just a few more days, it's another escalation. A few more days, another escalation. A few more days, another escalation. Of course, they actually come out with news and saying, I will never send troops in. Boom, then the troops are in. It's almost like they're kind of giving everybody a little warning about everything that's going on here. And it scares me because this is easily how wars have started. And we're not talking about a civil war in a third world country. We're not talking about a war between two countries where they're fighting over a border. We're talking about the strongest powers on the planet are now battling with each other. And not just saber rattling. I mean, so far it's been some saber rattling and a lot of threats, but I don't know about you, but I take these threats very seriously. And I think it is just a matter of time with the escalation that's continuing in that direction that it will lead to World War III. Of course, when it comes to preparedness and prepping, this is actually the whole purpose of Goshen prepping is to get you and me ready. Ready for nuclear, ready for just stockpiling food, water, parts for your car, be able to actually make a community, which to me is probably one of the most important things because if we're looking at a Great Depression happening because of this, there's going to be a lot of people out of jobs, but they still need to get things done. So it's no better time, again, to not squabble. Not squabbling who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. Because let's be honest, you and me, we're just simply peons and pawns in the game anyway. And it doesn't matter who really is the culprit, who really is actually causing all these things. The most important thing is it's happening and you and I are not in control of the situation. All we can do is do the best for our family, our friends, and our neighbors. So community, everybody, really stick together and help each other out. And that's all we can do is try to be able to make it through this and without dying, without losing our family, which is like an awful reality that's coming closer and closer. All right, comments below. Let's talk about how we can stock up and how to be ready for this. Because honestly, in these frightening times, it's really difficult to get ready.